Hello, my name is Mireia and I'm a Eurodesk intern. And today we are here with Alejandra, who we will interview in the topic of mental health. Hello, Alejandra, how are you?
Hi, Mireia. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and being here part of the interview. We are really happy to have you here. First of all, just to begin, I want to ask you if you can do a short presentation of yourself.
So I'm Alejandra. I'm a 19-year-old Spanish and I'm a proud European too. And I'm currently studying international relations in Madrid. And I would identify myself as a conscious or like a concerned citizen. I'm an empath too, and I'm curious. And so all of those things, like my personality and my personal experiences, have taken me to really educate myself on mental health, like be curious. And so when talking about mental health, I just want to say that I am in no way a professional, but that I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm speaking from my friends' experience, from my generation's experience, and I really want to thank your desk to for its efforts in bringing awareness to this topic because that's much needed. So
Yes, we really think that it's a really important topic, so that's why we are really happy to be able to do this interview with you today. So I just want to start this interview with a short information.
Mhm.
According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 7 young people aged between 10 and 19 years old suffer from a mental health disorder. What what is
Yeah.
mental health to you, and how will you define a mental health disorder?
So here I would like to start by saying that mental health is not the same as mental illness. So they're much differentiated. So it's not the same to have poor mental health than to have a mental illness. So I just want to say that. Like a person with poor mental health can not be diagnosed a mental illness, and a person with a mental illness can also experience periods of like physical and social and emotional well-being. And so when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about our cognitive and behavioral and emotional well-being, right? So it's how we feel, how we think, and then how we behave or how we act. And so mental health does not mean to be happy all the time. In
Yes.
fact, it's very much impossible, but rather like um, allowing yourself to feel every emotion on the spectrum and having the resources to cope well with those problems. So making healthy choices. Um, so yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And
Mm-hmm.
mental illness um, r- affects very negatively on how we feel, how we think, and how we behave. And it's something that it's out of our control. So I'll put an example so that we can understand it better. If a person with good mental health feels sad, let's say, like, for example, he has failed an exam or whatever, um, those feelings are linked to thoughts. But a person with good mental health chooses what thoughts he wants to focus on. Like, not what he thinks necessarily, because that's quite impossible too, but
Mm-hmm.
he just chooses what to focus on. So he can choose, okay, I'm sad because I failed in my exam, but then the next time I will do better. So it's not that important. There are bigger
Mm-hmm.
issues. More exams are coming up, so that's what he chooses to focus on, and then he chooses how to act or how to behave. So he will probably say, okay, right now I'm feeling sad, so I will call a friend and I will talk with her, because talking with her always makes me feel great, and always boosts my mood or whatever. And for
Yes.
the next time I will study harder or study sooner or whatever it is. And so that's a person with a good mental health. If you've got poor mental health, on the other side, you feel bad, you feel sad, and you, even though you feel bad and you think sad thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
you don't behave on the healthiest way. So in that same situation, a person with poor mental health would maybe choose to isolate oneself, and not speak with anyone, binge watch TV or whatever, so not cope in the healthiest way. But then we've got a person with mental illness. So a person with mental illness would feel sad to because of that exam or whatever, but the sadness would be very intense, like extreme, not wouldn't go accordingly to what is really happening. And the thoughts would not stop at I failed my exam, but like he will start to question himself. Like let's say for example a person with an eating disorder, because there are many kinds of mental illnesses and they have different effects on people's life quality. Like there are mood disorders, psychotic disorders, eating disorders, and they need different things. But for example, a person with an eating disorder would start to think like, um, I feel sad because I failed my exam. I'm not enough. What will people think? Nobody will love
Mhm.
me. These catastrophical thoughts that are not real, but that he or she can help to feel, and then will act in a way, in this case, like purging or restricting or binging, and he or she would not be in control whatsoever. So that's why when we talk about a mental illness, we are talking about something extremely discapacitating,
Mhm.
and we're talking about a disability if it's not treated, because that affects every aspect of your life. So when you're it's not just in a mental illness. It's not just eating. In a substance abuse, drugs problem, it's not just drugs. It's your how you socialize. It's how you learn. It's what you're thinking about all the time, all of the time. So that's something that we have to differentiate, and
Yeah.
also that mental illnesses are not only sorry, mental illnesses are not only caused by um, our environmental factors, which they are too, but they are also caused by our brain chemistry. So whether we have like an imbalance or whatever, those things that nobody really understands how they work, but yet they do. And also genetical factors. So whether your relatives have had a mental health disorder or not. And it's just, I just wanted to say that, like, this is something to have into mind, like, into account.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you point this difference so people know what we are talking about when we talk
Mm.
about mental health disorder. This not, yeah, I think you just explain it perfectly and really clear for everybody. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think this mental health disorder affect so many young people? Which do you think are the causes of it?
So when we talk about young people, um, I think I've thought about it, and I think it's because we live in such an amount of uncertainty,
Hmm.
and uncertainty is very hard to tolerate and to cope for human beings. And in fact, there are studies that show that uncertainty is even more stressful than predictable negative consequences. So, for example, to wonder whether you will arrive late or not at that meeting is more stressful than knowing you will arrive late. And young people, especially, live in huge amounts of uncertainty because we don't know how our future is going to look like. We've got climate change going on, we've got economical crisis, political instability. So there are way too many factors going on, and we can't just help to wonder whether we will get to live that life that we want to or not. And on top of that uncertainty about our future, it is, and especially with the pandemic and the COVID, that adds way more uncertainty to what the
Yeah.
future is going to look like. Um, we have the daily stressors. So we have high demanding studies, finding a job, socializing, all these things that everybody has to deal with, right?
Hmm.
And in our younger generation, I also think it's because young people are more prone to talk about mental health more openly and more prone to report that we are suffering from mental health, whereas with other generations may be suffering from it too, but will not be as open talking about it because our young generations are lowering that stigma associated with mental health and have been educated in more about emotions
Yeah,
and how mental health works. So I think those are kind of some factors that may be
but do
adding
you,
to the
yeah.
equation.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you because you already talked about the pandemic, so it just
Mhm.
increased this insecurity that young people may have of find a job, and because of the economic crisis, the pandemic just make it all even bigger. So I guess the
Mhm.
effect that this had with to the mental health of young people, it was even stronger and it went worse. That's why maybe also with the data that we have, we know that because of during the pandemic, the number of people affected and that have a mental health disorder had increased a lot. But I wanted to ask you more about, you said that now young people is more open to talk about the topic
Mhm.
because maybe they are a bit more educated on it. Do you think that this education is enough, or that maybe it's still missing something?
Yeah, it's definitely still not enough because there is education at some point, but I think it's not that there is education, but the information is out there. So young
Mhm.
people are more able to look for it when they have questions regarding mental health. So it's easier that you yourself start to wonder more about the topic and start getting that information and start sharing it with your friends and sharing it online or whatever. So it's education, but it's an education that usually comes from the person, right?
Mhm.
um,
Yes.
so it's not given to you like, hey, this is anxiety. No, but you start to experience anxiety and start wondering, why is this happening to me? So
Yes.
we are the generation that has the internet available and social media accounts that are spreading the word, and yes, so I think we are the ones that are making sure that that information, that education gets out there. So we are the ones demanding our governments, hey, we need more means, we need more awareness into this topic. And so I think it's great that our generation is like that.
Yes.
But it definitely would be much appreciated if this education came sooner and came in a compulsory way, like
Mhm.
in primary schools and such, and not then when you start to feel anxious or whatever and start to educate yourself. So it should come sooner. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm. You have mentioned social media.
Yeah.
What do you think, until which point social media can affect to the mental health, maybe in a positive way, as you said before, because you can find information there, but maybe also in a negative way?
Yes, there are so many factors in social media. Um, I would say first that social media can alter your perception of reality. And we tend to suffer based on what we perceive our reality to be, right? So, social media can expose us to the idea that, like, everybody's having fun but you, everybody has a happy life but you, is beautiful but you, right? So, we tend to think that this is how life is supposed to be and that it is like this for everybody but me. So you start to question yourself, right? Like, what is wrong with me? And that can definitely impact your mental health. But also, you have a word, you can choose who you follow and who to like declutter on
Mm-hmm.
social media. So you can choose to unfollow accounts that don't leave you feeling your best and that you notice that are impacting you and how you think, and start to follow accounts that, for example, educate on mental health or any other like topics you're interested in. And also with social media, we've got the thing that um, they are very engaging no matter what kind of content you're consuming. But if you're using social media, you're not doing other things that may be better for your mental health, such as going out with friends or walking your dog, reading a book, studying,
Mhm.
all these things that are not immediately rewarding, but that on the long run and even on the medium run are way better for you and your mental health. So that's another stressor I find in social media. And then there's of course like hate comments, um, backed by like anonymity in social media, and that literally can follow you anywhere. Like even cyberbullying in extreme cases, which is horrible to think about. Uh, but that happens, and that definitely impacts hugely on somebody's mental health. And yeah, there's just so many things. We also seek validation in social media through comments and likes and direct messages. So the moment we don't get it, like one post does not do as good or whatever, we start to question ourselves too. So
Mhm.
I think social media is something that can definitely affect your mental health, but that does not necessarily have to do so. In fact, it can improve it too if well managed. But it's definitely difficult to get to that point. And I think that's something we all struggle with, like that balance between the
Yes.
positive and negative aspects. And yeah,
Okay, I wanted to ask you now, changing the topic and going more for the people that maybe are in a situation of maybe they are not sure what is happening to them, but they know that something is not going well. And the main question is, how do you ask for help? Where can you go? What can you do? How do you combat a mental health disorder?
yeah, that's a big one. I would say that firstly, speak and talk to the people that love you and you love back, your closest family, your closest friends. Um, and don't wait until you can't no more, like
Mm-hmm.
until you can't stand something no more to ask for that help and to comment on it. um, and even if you fear their I don't know, their response or whatever, do it with fear because in the long run it's going to be way much better for you than not doing so. So yeah, close people, they are the one you trust the most. They are the ones that will get out of their way to help you whenever you need it. And we just need love and affection. But of course, if we're talking about a mental illness, it's crucial that we get either psychological or psychiatrical help. Uh, like if our body was ill, we would go to the doctor and we would take the medicines needed. So if our
Yes.
brain is ill, it's the same. The situation does not change, with the exception that it has a stigma associated with it, which is what we're trying to diminish and lower. So yeah, definitely love, but also means and and professional support.
And for the people that are in the other side, so for example, people that maybe luckily they are not affected for a mental health disorder, but they see that people around them maybe are in this situation, what can they do? How can they help? And what should they not do?
Yeah, that's a big one. What they should they not do? I guess just be there no matter what. Like show the other person that he or she can rely on you. So keep inviting him or her to plans, even though you know he or she will probably reject them, but still, like keep trying and
Mhm.
educate yourself on whatever he or she is going through. So you don't say unhelpful things that always mean well, but things such as, it's like everything will be fine, you will get through it through your willpower, or something like that, that just shows how uneducated we are as a society on mental health illnesses. Um, but I would say the biggest one and is to let the other person know that every version of himself is safe with you, that you
Mm.
care and love for every version of himself, yeah, and everything he's going through.
Thank you, Alejandra. I think this is a really important message. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is all for today. Thank you very much again to come here and being part of this interview. And it was really nice to meet you.
No, thank you, Media, for interviewing me. And yeah, and I don't know, I just thought the questions and everything was on point, and you were very kind too. So thank you.
Thank you.